Right, in my last video, I introduced the Success Helper Wellbeing Framework, which we use in our school to help children learn about their thinking and how that relates to how they feel and how they behave. And I explained briefly what the six success helpers were. Today, though, I thought I want to backtrack a little bit and talk about success helper thinking because um, we don't act, we don't feel without some kind of thought processes going on behind it or prompting it or making it happen. So this video session is really about the role of our thinking mainly. So if you have little children around you, and I am talking from an early childhood perspective here, if you have early childhood or young people around you, you might want to start off by saying, you know, what is it that you have in your head? And you might get all kinds of interesting answers to that, of course, but the one we're after is the brain. And what does the brain do? And the children are pretty smart and they know what the brain does. The brain tells us what we're thinking, or does our thinking for us. It's connected to lots of things that we do physiologically speaking, like blinking and walking, all of these kinds of things. But apart from that, there are other thoughts that go around our heads. They kind of bounce around quite often, all the time, in fact. And those thoughts are just thoughts, episodes of, or strings of words, if you like, self-talk. People talk about self-talk, what we say to ourselves, but what we say to ourselves and how we talk about ourselves and about things, about other people and about the world, really connected to some beliefs that we might have. And our beliefs are kind of habits of thinking that are really quite deep down within us. And what we tell ourselves is really an indicator of what it is we truly believe about ourselves. And I've thought about what thoughts are, thinking about my thoughts, and what we tell ourselves. And a thought can be a fleeting thought. It can be something that kind of enters your head and goes out the other side, a bit like one of those episodes of The Simpsons where Homer Simpson complains because every time he gets a new idea, it pushes the old one out. But every time we tell ourselves about ourselves, for instance, as an example, like, I'm pretty okay, even though I make mistakes every now and then, I know I am not my mistake. I'm okay. I'm always okay. Now that kind of thinking is healthy, self-helpful. They help us achieve our goals. It helps us to be successful because if we believe that, we're going to try again because we know our mistakes are not us. And if that's our belief, that belief has been developed over a number of years because the young person would hear from their parents like saying, hey, pretty good job, you did that well. Never addressing the person like, oh, you're dumb, can't do it, what's the point of trying? We talked about person-specific and we talked about behavior-specific feedback in the first video. So a child who hears those messages like you're not your behavior and you're not the opinion of others, you're okay, you're you, that's the way you are, and you're quite okay to be that way. They'll try things, they'll take risks because they know that making a mistake, that means they're not a mistake. However, on the other hand, you may have told yourself over a number of years that I'm dumb really, I don't know much, and I don't think I'll try this because, if I fail at this means it's just reminding me that I'm dumb anyway. So that's another kind of belief, habit of thinking, if you like. So the two that I've just outlined there are helpful or unhelpful. And I'd like to talk to you about, well, how do these thoughts become beliefs? Because a thought can be a thought, it can be a fleeting thought, it could come and go pretty quickly, but a belief is something that stays there because you really firmly believe it. And I was thinking, how might I demonstrate that? Well, here I have, can you see that? That is a thread, one single thread. Now, I can easily break that thread. I think, yes, there you go, it's broken. That's easily broken. If we, if this thread can represent a thought, comes and goes, an idea, well then so be it. However, if we consider, I've got another few strands here, if we consider that we hear messages that, you're dumb, we're dumb, what's the point of trying? We start to tell ourselves, well, I'm getting enough information from people and experience that I am dumb, that I can't do it, that it must be true. So that thought is added, other thoughts are added to it. So if we each strand of these is a thought, and the more thoughts you have, I can't do it, what's the point, I'm done, the more strands we add to that initial strand, it becomes more powerful, it becomes stronger, and what you have is kind of something that's really hard to break. I can't break that. Well, I could if I tried really hard, but you get my drift, don't you? We can add strands to this till it becomes a fairly strong, unbreakable rope. Well, maybe you might want to think of that rope as being a belief that I've developed. I've added thoughts, lots of the similar thoughts, until it's become this strong rope of belief. It's my belief. Now, that's an unhealthy way of thinking. If I believe I'm dumb, I'm less likely to try new things. I'll feel sad. I might feel angry at times and frustrated, but extremely frustrated, not just a little bit frustrated, because I believe, this is something that I believe. So that's a strong belief. However, if a person hears things like you're okay no matter what, that's a good effort, or that you didn't do so well there, but you're always okay, these things add up to a strong belief that I'm okay no matter what. And that becomes like a strong rope. So we've got two ways of thinking illustrated there. One is, I'm dumb, stupid, what's the point? And the other one is, look, I'm going to try lots of things because I know if I don't get it right, it's not the end of the world. I'm okay, I'll try again. Okay, so this is the work of the brain, and our kids construct these ideas about themselves. Adults do too. When I work with young children, when I work with adults in a counselling situation, we often get down to the nitty-gritty of what it is that you believe about yourself. And people who experience feelings of extreme sadness, anxiety, anger, guilt, it's all around this idea, this constructed belief that they somehow are not worth much. Now, the evidence is there that can challenge that, and part of the counselling process is to be able to say, well, look, this is what you believe, but here's evidence that suggests that that can't be true. That's the work of what we do at school, but I'll just put that aside for a moment, and I just would like you to think about what it is that I've just presented to you, and that you understand that these ideas we carry around with us, thoughts are thoughts, they come and go, but beliefs are kind of rational or irrational thoughts put together as a strong kind of belief. One can be helpful and the other one is unhelpful, or if you're an adult you can say it's rational or it's irrational. Okay, now I talk about the success helper framework that we teach our young children, the 6 success helper capabilities, and so we might take a few seconds or a minute to talk about what is success. Now, success isn't what I tell you success is. Well, success is what it is that you want. What do you want to achieve? What are your goals? How are you going to manage your time? And how are you going to forge a pathway to achieving your goals? Now, it's okay to have goals. It's okay to work hard towards your goals. You may or you may not reach them. You may kind of adjust your goals because they're not probably reasonable goals. But always, it's important to know that even if I don't achieve my goals, that doesn't take away my value. And that's the nitty-gritty. That's the basics of what it is that we're teaching your children. That you can fail at something, people can have a negative opinion of you, but that never takes away your value. So this brain stuff's very important. And when we teach the Success Helper Wellbeing Framework, that's our first kind of port of call. What is it that happens inside your head? It's called thinking. Um, and to reinforce the idea that our thinking is connected to how we feel, our strength, our feeling, and the choices that we make. So if we've constructed a belief rope, if I can use the rope analogy, a strong belief that I'm okay no matter what, I'm more likely to try new things. I'm more likely to feel okay and content and happy about things. If I've constructed or built or made a rope, a thinking rope or a belief rope that says I'm not so good, I'm not worth much, I always fail, and that's the way it's always going to be, I'm going to feel pretty unhappy a lot of the time. I might not try things, I might withdraw, and so this kind of awareness and learning is very important to teach our children. So if you're looking at this video, and hopefully there's some ideas that you might be able to transfer or relate to your little children. Now, how do you relate this? How do you teach this to young children? Because it's pretty kind of can be complex. Or some people say to me, that's very complex stuff, and I don't know whether or not little children are able to kind of understand and internalize this stuff. However, in my experience, I've learned the opposite to be true. They're pretty good at understanding what this is and remembering it and retaining it. I suppose it's the way it's introduced to them that is important. So, for instance, a poem that I use with little kids just to introduce the idea of the brain is called My Brain. And it goes something like this. My brain lives in my head. Its job is to do my thinking. If there's something in my eye, it tells them to start blinking. My brain thinks lots of thoughts. They bounce around my head. If I eat a bucket of flour, I'll turn into a loaf of bread. My brain is just like jelly. It wobbles and it wibbles. It really is a helpful mate. It helps me work out riddles. My brain is sometimes lazy. It plays tricks and puzzles me. Does 2 + 2 make 4 or 133? My brain is my best friend. Without it, where would I be? If it wasn't for my brain, my head would be empty. So that's a bit of a nonsense kind of rhyme that children kind of relate to, thinks funny, it's quirky, but it just alerts them to this idea that, our brain is very important, and because it does lots of thinking for us, hopefully we can learn how to recognize when we're using thinking that's not helpful. And we think about the evidence there that really challenges any belief that, for instance, I'm dumb, stupid, or I'm not worthwhile. So once we've established what the brain is and what it does, or what the brain does, and we've identified these two kinds of thinking, irrational thinking, unhelpful, stops us from achieving our goals, causes unhappiness, and helpful, rational thinking, helps us achieve our goals, helps us manage our emotions. We can't be happy all the time, but when this irrational headset begins to creep in and starts to undermine us, we can recognize it and we can do something about it. So how do we let little children, 5-year-olds, 4-year-olds, understand this? Well, that's by giving a name to the kinds of thinking they may be using. And so in the next video we're going to look at ways in which we can reinforce this idea that our thinking is very important, because it's connected to how we feel and it's connected to how we behave. And if we understand that, we can learn strategies, methods, ways of managing ourselves, so that most of the time we're headed in the direction we want to go, and that if we come to some hurdles or bumps in the road, we can work out ways around them, over them, and manage ourselves so that we can keep going. Because most of the time, when we apply ourselves and when we have a bit of confidence, we can generally get to where we need to be. And our brain's a very important helper in that sense. So, so this has just been an introduction to our thinking and how we might introduce it to our children. The next video will look at practical ways of talking about, teaching about these rational and irrational ways that we think, and then support our children in being aware of our thinking and how it affects how we feel and behave, so that they can become really good managers of their emotions and their behaviors. Okay, so we'll do that next time. All the best. Thank you. Bye.